Hi, my name is Lori Lee, and today I'll be presenting on my research, which is on Latinx students and ethnic congruent teachers, benefit or limitation, examining higher percentages of Latinx teachers on campuses in Lubbock, Texas. So the aim of this study was to examine if a relationship exists between the percentage of Latinx teachers on a campus and the reading assessment scores of those students. So this involved two different research questions. The first is simply, do higher percentages of Latinx teachers in schools affect Latinx STAR reading scores? And secondly, does a campus with 75% or more teachers self-identifying as Latinx affect ethnic congruent students' performance on the STAR reading assessment? This data set is from administrative data from Lubbock ISD or LISD. LISD is a large city K-12 district in the Permian Basin in West Texas. And I took 3 different data sets for this. The first was from parental registration forms, and that provided student demographic information such as race, gender, ethnicity, and home language. I also took transcript data from LISD, which included course information, assessment scores, attendance, discipline, and credits earned. And then a third database, which was the staff database. And from there, it had teachers' self-reported gender, race, and ethnicity, as well as subjects of instruction, certifications, educational attainment, years of teaching experience, and employment status. For this, our key predictor variable was the Latinx students' state standardized reading test scores, and this was done by campus. The independent variable for research question 1 is the percentage of Latinx teachers on a school campus, and for research question 2, whether the percentage for the amount of Latinx teachers on each campus was at least 75. Okay, before we go further into the data set and research, I wanted to show you just a figure that shows non-Latinx students versus Latinx students in LISD and how they performed on average on the STAR reading assessment at the end of each year. And this is for years 2012 through 2019. So there's some clear correlating data. You can see that the lowest year of scores for the non-Latinx students was the same for the Latinx students. However, you can also see that Latinx students trend lower on average for STAR reading assessment scores. So to get this data, I first took the student data for those that were available in the administrative data from LISD. And these students that I chose had to have multiple years of assessment data, and they also had to correlate with the teacher database that gave the teacher's gender, race, ethnicity, and years of experience. So I started out with 16,585 student by year observations, which spanned the 7 years. And then I combined that with 2,571 teachers who taught for multiple years and whose information was available from the transcript data and also the staff database. Originally, there were 65,177 students who had multiple years of transcripts available, or multiple years of data available on their transcripts. And then I dropped any students that were not in a teacher's class for at least 1 month, and I used absentee data and just transcript data as to whether they stayed in the class. And then I merged that with the transcript data, and that brought 844,791 distinct observations. I dropped in.
I found this on the web.
Dropped all the duplicated data from that, which dropped me down to 822,325. And then I matched that teacher transcript and student data, which dropped it to 122,567. Then I brought in my vector of covariates, and I dropped any students who did not have available data for the covariates, which ultimately brought about 89,963 observations. So my equations for this analysis, you can see that they're very similar. And the first, you'll see PL, which stands for the percentage of Latinx teachers on that campus. So this is where YIST is the reading score of student I assigned to school S during year T, also controlling for lag reading score, as well as X, the vector of covariates. And of course, variable E represents the error term. On the second question, we have replaced the percentage of Latinx teachers with 75, which ask, what is the effect of school having 75% or more of Latinx teachers upon Latinx students, controlling for lag reading score and the vector of covariates at the campus level? So for this, I created binary indicators for all the student and teacher race and ethnicity, as well as sex, ESL status, disability status, whether they were considered economically disadvantaged, migrant, immigrant, GT, which is gifted and talented. So we're including all the special populations of a school here that have to be reported. And also, from those binary indicators, I created totals and found percentages for each of those groups. So my first table is just the types of variables that I use, the descriptive statistics of my main study. And you will see that I start with students that are identifying as Latinx, and then I go through percentage of peers, and that's for all the special populations, all the races. Also, I do that for disability, migrant, immigrant status. And then I find all the percentages of teachers by race or ethnicity. And then finally, the years of teacher experience. So you'll see the lag reading score here. This is a categorical data point. And then I have discrete data, which is all the percentages of both students and teachers. And then finally, I have this continuous data, which is the years of teacher experience, which was measured with decimal points. And now we're going to see the same information, but with my schools with 75 percentile of Latinx teachers and schools that did not have a 75, were not in the 75th percentile of Latinx teachers. So if we're looking at bivariate associations here, we can see from table 2 and 3 that there is a relationship that exists between the percentage of teachers that self-identify as Latinx per school and whether Latinx students on that campus met the standard on their reading assessment. Column 2 of table 2 indicates that as the percentage of Latinx teachers increases in a district, student achievement scores on the statewide reading assessment drop by about 4 points, which is alarming. Additionally, according to table 3, on campuses that had 75% or more Latinx teachers, student reading assessment scores drop by almost 26 points. We will also see in table 4 that as the percentage of Latinx teachers increases, reading assessment scores drop by about 1 point. Therefore, the results are statistically significant, although the data points to a negative impact on students on campuses with higher rates of Latinx teachers, which is in opposition to some previous research related to race congruence. The magnitude of the results from research question are higher than those the first research question are higher those than research question 2, although roughly speaking, these are both relatively small magnitudes. Okay, so in this figure, we're looking at a multiple regression analysis with the vector of covariates that found that schools with 75% of teachers self-identifying as Latinx did significantly predict outcomes of standardized reading assessment scores. The p-value here being less than 0.000. The outcome explains for about 5% of the variation in scores. Multiple regression analysis with covariates also found it to be statistically significant as the percentage of Latinx teachers increased. In sum, the results provide evidence that there is a causal effect of having ethnic congruent teachers on campuses. More importantly, in comparison to previous studies, causal effects from exogenous factors, even when controlling for years of teachers' experience and the number of students that receive free and reduced price lunch, may be at play in the outcome. So ultimately, the limitations of this study were that there's a lack of data on the teachers. We don't know whether the impact is negative because the need simply outweighs the benefit of the percent or amount of Latinx teachers on that campus, or is it because there are different levels of training? For example, there is no information as to whether the teacher received their certification through, let's say, an alternate route instead of a four-year college for education on their getting their teaching degree. Also, there's so little research on SIFE students, SIFE standing for students with interrupted formal education, that we don't know also how many SIFE students there are on these campuses, because traditionally most SIFE students come from Mexico and South America, which is a huge population in West Texas and as part of Lubbock ISD's student data set. Furthermore, we're unsure as to what exactly are all of the exogenous factors from the study, because although we control for free and reduced lunch, the percent of peers of each race and ethnicity, we do not know how these students came to this school, if they were SIFE or not. And additionally, we don't know whether teachers are receiving different kinds of continuing education. Maybe this is playing a part. So essentially, this research question needs more research before any policy implications, before we make any policy changes or we recommend policy changes. The implications here being that we need to understand better where these students are coming from and what is affecting them when it comes to having ethnic congruent teachers. Thank you. That is all my presentation, and I hope that you found it informative. This is a really important topic as more and more immigrants arrive in the United States and go to public schools, so that we know how to properly service these students. Thank you.